Across the vast, silent expanse of the cosmos, humanity has cast its gaze outward, listening for a signal, a whisper, a single note in the cosmic symphony that proves we are not alone. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has, for decades, been a story of radio telescopes and mathematical probabilities, a search for our counterparts in the distant star fields. But what if this entire search is predicated on a flawed assumption? What if the evidence of extraterrestrial contact is not in our future, but deeply embedded in our most distant past? This is the central premise of a theory that challenges the very foundations of human history, the ancient astronaut hypothesis. It proposes that our ancestors did not evolve in isolation. It suggests that advanced beings from other worlds visited Earth thousands of years ago, and in doing so, shaped our technology, our culture, our biology, and our destiny. For generations, this idea has been relegated to the fringes of science and archaeology. Yet, with each new discovery, each anomaly that defies conventional explanation, the theory demands a more serious examination. The evidence is not found in blurry photographs or modern eyewitness accounts, but carved into the hardest stone, written in the world's oldest languages, and perhaps even encoded within our own DNA. We are not searching for alien invaders, but for our own creators. This is a journey to decipher the cosmic fingerprints left behind on planet Earth, an investigation into the lost architects of our world. Our first destination lies high in the Andes Mountains of modern-day Bolivia, at an altitude of nearly 13,000 feet. Here, on the barren Altiplano, lies the ruin of Pumapunku. It is part of the larger Tiahuanaco civilization, a culture that mainstream archaeology dates to between 300 and 1000 AD at first glance. The site appears to be a chaotic jumble of massive stone blocks, as if a giant toy set was scattered by some cataclysmic event. But a closer look reveals something utterly astonishing, something that defies the official narrative of a Stone Age or Bronze Age culture. The stones of Pumapunku are primarily composed of andesite and red sandstone. Andesite is an incredibly hard, volcanic rock, registering a 7 on the Mohs scale of hardness, just below topaz and diamond. According to the accepted historical timeline, the Tiahuanaco people possessed rudimentary tools, stone hammers, bronze chisels, and abrasive sand. To work with these tools on a material as resilient as andesite would be an almost impossibly slow and arduous process. Yet, the stones of Pumapunku are not merely cut. They are engineered with a level of precision that is staggering even by today's standards. We see complex cuts, razor-sharp right angles, and perfectly smooth surfaces that feel almost machine-made. Drills holes are bored into the stone with mathematical exactness, and intricate interior corners are fashioned in a way that seems impossible without advanced machining tools. Perhaps most perplexing are the famous These massive, multi-ton andesite blocks are uniform in design, as if They feature an array of interlocking cuts, T-grooves, and complex joints. Archaeologists and engineers have concluded that these blocks were designed to fit together like a massive, three-dimensional puzzle, locking into one another without the need for mortar. This modular interlocking design speaks to a level of planning and prefabrication that is completely out of place for its supposed time period. How could a civilization without the wheel, without a written language, and without hardened steel tools achieve this? Engineers who have studied the site have noted that to replicate the precision of Pumapunku today would require a suite of computer-aided design, laser-cutting tools, and diamond-tipped drills. The mainstream explanation of slow, patient work with simple tools and sand abrasive simply does not account for the sheer scale and flawless perfection of the workmanship. The cuts are too fine, the angles too perfect, the interlocking mechanisms too complex. The ancient astronaut theory offers a different perspective. These were not the creations of a primitive culture, but the remnants of a structure built with technology far beyond their, and perhaps even our own. A technology that could liquefy stone, mold it, or cut it with energy-based tools. The ruins of Pumapunku are not a monument to primitive ingenuity, but the shattered footprint of an impossible technology. Half a world away, buried in the sands of Egypt, lies another architectural enigma that challenges the established timeline of history. In Abydos, one of Egypt's oldest cities, Behind the famous temple of Seti I sits a mysterious and much more ancient structure. Discovered in the early 20th century, the Assyrian is a megalithic marvel that is architecturally distinct from any other known temple in Egypt, while the adjacent temple of Seti is covered in intricate hieroglyphs and classic dynastic art. The Assyrian is stark, monolithic, and unadorned. It is built from enormous blocks of red granite, quarried in Aswan over 300 miles away. Many of these blocks weigh between 60 and 100 tons each. They are fitted together with a seamless precision that mirrors the impossible stonework of Pumapunku. There is no mortar. The colossal weight of the stones and the perfection of their joinery hold the structure together. The central hall features 10 massive granite pillars, each carved from a single piece of stone, supporting equally gigantic length. The most baffling aspect of the Assyrian is its depth. The floor of the structure is built some 50 feet below the current ground level and sits well below the natural water table. For much of the year, its central hole is flooded, creating an island surrounded by a channel of water. This has led many to speculate that it was always intended to be a subterranean, water-filled chamber. Egyptologists attribute the structure to the pharaoh Seti I, around 1300 BC, suggesting it was built as a symbolic tomb for the god Osiris. Yet, this explanation is fraught with problems. First, the architectural style bears no resemblance to the New Kingdom period in which Seti I reigned. The megalithic, unadorned style is more akin to the Valley Temple at Giza, a structure associated with the much older Sphinx. Secondly, the sheer difficulty of building such a massive structure deep underground, below the water table, would have been a monumental feat even for the skilled Egyptian engineers. It would have required a sophisticated cofferdam system and continuous water pumping, a level of hydroengineering that is not documented elsewhere. Why would Seti I, whose own temple above is a masterpiece of New Kingdom art, construct an adjacent building in a completely alien, archaic style, using near-impossible construction methods? Ancient astronaut theorists propose a radical alternative. The Assyrian is not a creation of Seti I, but a relic from a much earlier, lost civilization, a civilization with the technology to quarry, transport, and assemble 100-ton blocks with effortless precision. Seti, I did not build the Assyrian. Found Italiano, recognizing its sacred power and profound antiquity. He built his own temple next to it, incorporating the much older structure into his sacred complex. The Assyrian, like Pumapunku, is a legacy structure, a leftover piece of a forgotten, technologically advanced past. It is a silent testament to architects who could command the elements and manipulate stone on a scale that remains incomprehensible. These structures are not merely buildings. They are anomalies in stone, fingerprints of godlike beings who once walked the earth. The evidence for this forgotten past is not confined to stone and architecture. It is also deeply embedded in the world's most ancient writings, in texts that describe a history of the world far different from the one we know. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the ancient Sumerians left behind thousands of cuneiform tablets. Among them is a truly extraordinary document, the Sumerian King List. This text records the lineage of rulers of Sumer and its neighboring regions. The list is a mix of verifiably historical kings and mythological figures. The kings who ruled after a great flood, a deluge story with parallels to the biblical tale of Noah, have reigns of reasonable lengths. They can be cross-referenced with other archaeological findings, confirming their existence. But the section of the list detailing the reigns of kings before the Great Flood is utterly perplexing. Here, the document lists 8 kings who reigned for a cumulative total of 241,200 years. One king, Alulam, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years. Another, Enmenluana, for 43,200 years. Mainstream historians dismiss these incredible lifespans as pure myth, exaggerations meant to deify the earliest kings. But what if they are not myths? Ancient astronaut theorists, most notably Zecharia Sitchin, proposed that these Prediluvian kings were not human. They were the extraterrestrial visitors themselves, the Anunnaki, who, due to their alien biology or perhaps the different atmospheric conditions of early Earth, had lifespans far beyond that of a human. The Sumerian king list, in this interpretation, is not a fanciful myth, but a literal, albeit misunderstood, historical record of the alien governors who ruled humanity in its infancy. The Sumerians' knowledge was not limited to impossibly long-lived kings. Their understanding of the cosmos was profoundly advanced and eerily accurate. They knew of the planets in our solar system out to Saturn, all visible to the naked eye. But their texts and cylinder seals also appear to depict a complete solar system showing all the planets we know today, including Uranus, Neptune, and even Pluto's celestial bodies that were not officially discovered by modern science until the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. How could they have known of these distant worlds? Their cosmology was centered around a solar system with 12 primary bodies: the Sun, the Moon, and 10 planets. The 10th planet, which they called Nabier, was said to have a vast 3,600-year elliptical orbit that brought it into the inner solar system between Mars and Jupiter. It was from this planet, Sitchian and others argue, that the Anunnaki came. Sumerian texts describe this planet and its periodic return in great detail. While modern astronomy has yet to confirm the existence of such a planet, the persistent anomalies in the orbits of outer solar system objects have led some astronomers to hypothesize the presence of a massive, unseen planet. Did the Sumerians simply invent a mythological planet? Or were they recording an astronomical reality taught to them by visitors who called that distant world home? Their complex sexagesimal basic mathematical system, which we still use to measure time in circles, and their deep understanding of the 25,920-year cycle of the precession of the equinoxes further points to a body of knowledge that seems far too advanced for a civilization at the dawn of history. It is a legacy of knowledge, a celestial code, gifted to them by starfaring gods. This theme of advanced technology in ancient texts is not unique to Sumer. On the other side of the world, in the ancient Sanskrit epics of India, we find even more explicit and astonishing descriptions of advanced machinery and weaponry. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana, two cornerstones of Hindu literature, are much more than religious myths and allegories. They contain vivid, detailed accounts of flying machines known as Vita. These are not described in vague, poetic terms. The texts provide technical specifics. They speak of different classes of Vimana, powered by various means. The Vimanika Shastra, a controversial early 20th century text said to be transcribed from a much older source, describes Vimanas with propulsion systems based on mercury vortex engines, a concept that sounds eerily like a form of plasma or ion drive. The descriptions are replete with technical jargon, discussing the construction of the craft from special light alloys, its ability to become invisible, to hover, to move at incredible speeds, and even to travel between different worlds. Even more disturbing are the descriptions of the weapons deployed from these Vimanas during epic battles. The texts speak of the Brahmastra, a weapon that could destroy an entire army. The description of its effects is chillingly familiar to a modern reader. The text describes a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as 10,000 suns, rose in all its splendor. It was a weapon unknown, which reduced to ashes the entire race. Following its use, the corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. Their hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. For generations, these passages were seen as pure poetic fantasy, the vivid imagination of ancient poets. But read through the lens of the 21st century, they sound uncannily like a precise and technical description of a nuclear detonation and its subsequent radioactive fallout. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific director of the Manhattan Project, was a scholar of Sanskrit. After witnessing the first atomic bomb test, he famously quoted a line from another Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." It is clear he saw the profound and terrifying parallel. Could the ancient poets of India have imagined the effects of nuclear radiation, the burning of bodies beyond recognition, and the contamination of food, thousands of years before the discovery of atomic energy. Or were they, like the Sumerians, acting as scribes? Were they recording the history of a forgotten age when gods in flying chariots waged war in the skies with weapons of unimaginable power? The Vimana epics might be humanity's oldest and most detailed account of an extraterrestrial war, fought in our atmosphere and on our soil. The cosmic fingerprint is not just in stone or starler, but in the written warnings of a terrifying, lost technology. From the impossible architecture of the ancient world and the uncanny knowledge of its texts, our investigation now turns inward to the very building blocks of life itself. The ultimate question of our origins may find its answer not in archaeology, but in biology. The origin of life on Earth remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in science. While we understand the mechanisms of evolution, the initial spark to transition from non-living chemicals to the first self-replicating organism is a puzzle. One intriguing scientific theory that addresses this is This is the hypothesis that life exists throughout the universe and is distributed by meteoroids, asteroids, comets, and planetoids. In its basic form, it suggests that microscopic life, like extremophile bacteria, could become trapped in debris, ejected from a planet after an impact, travel dormant through space, and then seed life upon arrival on another hospitable world. The discovery of organic molecules, the building blocks of life, in meteorites lends credibility to this idea. Perhaps life on Earth did not begin here, but arrived from somewhere else. However, there is a more radical and specific version of this theory, known as directed panspermia. This hypothesis was given a considerable degree of scientific legitimacy when it was proposed in 1973 by Francis Crick, the very man who co-discovered the double helix structure of DNA. Crick, along with his colleague, Leslie Orgel, was troubled by several aspects of life's origins on Earth. The genetic code is universal to all life on our planet, from the simplest bacteria to the most complex mammal. This suggests a single origin event. Furthermore, they noted the perplexing reliance of our biological systems on the element molybdenum, an extremely rare element in the Earth's crust, while more common elements like chromium and nickel are largely ignored. These anomalies led Crick to a stunning conclusion. He proposed that life on Earth may not have arrived by accident. Instead, directed panspermia suggests that the first microorganisms were deliberately sent to Earth by an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. This could have been done for any number of reasons: to terraform the planet for later colonization, or perhaps as a vast galactic experiment, seeding barren worlds to see what evolves. They would have sent a payload of extremophile microorganisms in an unmanned craft, designed to protect them from the rigors of space travel and atmospheric entry. This theory transforms the entire discussion. The Anunnaki of the Sumerians, the gods of ancient lore, are no longer just visitors or builders. They are our progenitors. We are, in a very literal sense, the descendants of an alien seeding program. This idea reframes the search for ET from a search for others to a search for our own ultimate ancestors. It suggests that the instructions for life itself might be the most profound cosmic fingerprint of all. The blueprint for every living thing on this planet may have been written in a laboratory orbiting a distant star, billions of years ago. Our own DNA becomes the final ancient text, a biological cuneiform tablet waiting to be fully deciphered. And so, we are brought full circle. From impossible structures scattered across the globe, to texts that speak of celestial knowledge and advanced warfare, to the biological possibility of our own off-world origins, a compelling pattern begins to emerge. These are not isolated mysteries. They may be connected threads in a single, magnificent, and forgotten story. Is there a way to tie them together? A final piece of evidence that suggests a global, coordinated effort in our distant past. This brings us to the concept of the world grid. Researchers and cartographers have long noted strange patterns in the placement of ancient sacred sites. Pyramids, megalithic temples, and earthworks across different continents, built by supposedly unconnected cultures, appear to align with one another with geometric and astronomical precision. The most famous of these theories is the Orion correlation theory, proposed by Robert Bovell, which posits that the three main pyramids at Giza were laid out on the ground to perfectly mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt. He argues the entire Giza Plateau is a map of the heavens, frozen in stone at a specific time, 10,500 BC, an era far preceding the accepted age of the pyramids. Expanding on this idea, other researchers have proposed that if you draw lines on a globe connecting major ancient sites Giza, Machu Picchu, the Nazca Lines, Angkor Wat, Easter Island, they form a distinct geometric pattern, a planetary grid of energy or information. Many of these sites lie on a single great circle, an equator tilted from our current one. This suggests the work of a single culture with a complete knowledge of global geography, executing a master plan on a planetary scale. Who could have possessed such knowledge in the ancient world? Who had the ability to travel the globe, survey it, and coordinate a building project that spanned continents and millennia? No known ancient culture had this capability. 2 ancient astronaut theorists. The answer is the world grid is the ultimate fingerprint of a global, advanced civilization. The same architects who engineered Pumapunku and the Assyrian, the same beings chronicled by the Sumerians and the ancient Indians, were also planetary engineers. They laid out these great monuments, not as random temples or tombs, but as interconnected nodes in a global network. Perhaps this network served as a power generation system, a navigation aid for their spacecraft, or a form of astronomical clock, tracking the long cycles of the cosmos. It implies a purpose and a level of coordination that transcends individual cultures and points to a single, off-world influence, a guiding hand that shaped the very face of the planet according to a celestial blueprint. We are left at a crossroads of belief and evidence. Mainstream science and archaeology have built a careful and detailed history of humanity, a story of slow, linear progress from primitive hunter-gatherers to modern technological civilization. It is a compelling and largely consistent narrative. Yet, it is a narrative filled with glaring anomalies, with artifacts and structures that do not fit, with knowledge that should not have existed, with myths that sound more like history. The ancient astronaut hypothesis, while speculative, offers a framework that resolves many of these paradoxes. It explains the precision of Pumapunku, the antiquity of the Assyrian, the advanced knowledge of the Sumerians, the high-tech descriptions in the Vedic texts, and the geometric precision of the world grid. It posits that human history is not a straight line, but a punctuated one, dramatically accelerated by external intervention. Perhaps the gods never left. Perhaps they are simply waiting, watching our progress, observing the civilization that grew from the seeds they planted so long ago. The search for alien life need not be a passive one. It's been listening for faint signals from the depths of space. It can be an active search, an archaeological and historical investigation into our own past. The evidence may be all around us, hidden in plain sight, dismissed as myth or eroded by time. The cosmic fingerprints are there, on the high plateaus of the Andes, buried under Egyptian sands, written on ancient clay, and woven into the very fabric of our being. We need only have the courage to look to question the history we have been taught, and to accept the profound and world-altering possibility that we are part of a galactic legacy, far older and grander than we have ever dared to imagine. The final chapter of our origin story has yet to be written. Its opening lines may lie not in our future, but in our deepest and most secret past. The genetic. The quest to uncover humanity's lost history does not end with analyzing stone and translating clay. In the 21st century, the investigation has turned to the most intimate and ancient record of all. The human genome. Our DNA is a library containing 3 billion letters of code, a biological history book passed down through countless generations. 4 décades. Scientists believe that over 97% of this code was junk DNA, evolutionary leftovers with no discernible function. This long-held belief is now collapsing under the weight of new discoveries. The ENCODE Encyclopedia of DNA Elements project revealed that at least 80% of our genome is biochemically active, playing crucial roles in regulating gene expression. This vast, newly understood landscape of our own biology opens a fascinating, if speculative, new front for the ancient astronaut hypothesis. If a technologically advanced civilization were to manipulate or create life on a planet, where would they leave their signature? What better place than in the uncoding, regulatory regions of the genome itself? A message? A mathematical formula? or a manufacturing mark could be encoded in the sequence of safe from the pressures of natural selection that constantly alter the protein coding genes. Scientists like physicist Paul Davies have seriously proposed a form of genomic SETI. Search for extraterrestrial intelligence, suggesting we actively look for such a signature within our own DNA and that of other organisms. Such a message would be the most durable and self-replicating artifact imaginable. It would copy itself into every living cell of every generation, surviving cataclysms that would turn cities to dust. Is it possible that the junk DNA is not junk at all, but a carrier wave for a message from our creators? Beyond a hidden message, some researchers point to specific genetic anomalies that seem out of place with a purely terrestrial, Darwinian model of slow, gradual evolution. For example, the human chromosome 2 is a major puzzle. Apes have 24 pairs of chromosomes, while humans have 23. It is understood that our chromosome 2 is the result of an end-to-end fusion of two ancestral ape chromosomes. While this fusion event is an accepted fact, the trigger for such a dramatic and rapid mutation remains a topic of debate. Could this chromosomal fusion, a key event that helped set humans on a distinct evolutionary path, have been an act of deliberate genetic engineering? Similarly, the HR1 gene, human accelerated region 1, shows an astonishing rate of evil. It is nearly identical among all mammals but differs in humans by 18 letters since our lineage split from chimpanzees. This incredibly rapid change in a crucial gene associated with brain development is a statistical anomaly. Ancient astronaut proponents argue that these genetic leaps and oddities could be the biological fingerprints of intervention. They propose that our ancestors were not just taught or guided, but actively upgraded. Our capacity for complex language, abstract thought, and technological innovation may not be solely the product of chance mutation and environmental pressure, but the result of a deliberate enhancement of a native primate species. In this view, we are not merely descendants of earthly evolution. We are a hybrid species, a blend of terrestrial biology and extraterrestrial engineering. Lost footprints. The search for geological technicity. If a highly advanced civilization operated on Earth millions of years ago, before the rise of humans, what evidence would be left? Buildings crumble, metals rust, and plastics degrade. Over geological timescales, nature is relentlessly efficient at erasing the traces of civilization. This challenge is at the heart of the Silurian hypothesis, a thought experiment by astrophysicist Adam Frank and NASA climatologist Gavin Schmidt, named after an ancient race from the show Doctor Who. The hypothesis asks, if there was an industrial civilization on Earth millions of years before us, could we detect its existence today? Their conclusion is that it would be extraordinarily difficult. The most likely evidence would not be a physical artifact, but a geochemical scar left in the rock strata, technosignature. An industrial civilization would likely leave behind telltale signs. A spike in carbon isotopes from the burning of fossil fuels, unusual deposits of plastics or synthetic polymers that resist decay, or perhaps novel radioactive isotopes left over from industrial processes, or even a catastrophic nuclear event. Applying this logic, we can re-examine the Earth's geological history. While no definitive pre-human technosignature has been found, some puzzling discoveries hint at technological activity in an impossibly distant past. The Oklo phenomenon in Gabon, Africa, is a prime example. In 1972, scientists discovered that uranium deposits at Oklo had once operated as self-sustaining nuclear fission reactors. These natural reactors spontaneously activated approximately 1.7 billion years ago and ran for hundreds of thousands of years. The official scientific consensus is that this was a unique but entirely natural occurrence, possible due to a higher concentration of fissionable uranium-235 in the Earth's crust at the time, combined with groundwater acting as a neutron moderator. However, the precision required for this to occur naturally is staggering. The conditions, the exact percentage of U-235, the purity of the ore, and the specific flow of water had to be perfect. The system even appeared to have a self-regulating mechanism to prevent a meltdown. Some nuclear engineers have expressed astonishment that nature could create such a stable and long-running reactor. Could the Oklo reactors be the ultimate geological technosignature? Could they be the remnants of an ancient, non-human civilizations' power plants, or perhaps a toxic waste disposal site that have been dismissed as a natural freak of nature, while the mainstream view prevails. Ookla remains a potent reminder that our understanding of Earth's deep past may be incomplete. It suggests that evidence for ancient technology might not look like a circuit board, but like an anomaly in the very chemistry of the planet's rock. A battle in the sky. Unexplained historical records. The evidence for visitation is not confined to prehistory. Recorded history is filled with encounters with unexplained phenomena, events that were interpreted by our ancestors through the lens of their culture, often as divine or demonic portents. Stripped of that cultural interpretation, some historical accounts read like modern UFO reports. One of the most compelling is the 1561 celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg, Germany. On the morning of April 14th, residents witnessed what they described as an aerial battle. Contemporary accounts, along with a detailed woodcut broadsheet produced by Hans Glaser, described the sky filled with a multitude of objects. They reported seeing large cylindrical objects from which red, black, and orange spheres emerged and darted about the sky as if they were fighting. Triangles and crosses were also seen among them. The event lasted for over an hour, after which a large, black, spear-like object appeared, and the spheres were seen to fall to the earth outside the city, where they supposedly disintegrated in a cloud of smoke. Just 5 years later, a similar event was reported over Basel, Switzerland in 1566. For 3 days, residents observed large black spheres in the sky, engaged in some kind of rapid, energetic contest, culminating on the third day with a spectacular sunrise-like event and the objects disappearing. These were not vague myths or legends. They were contemporary news reports, documented by educated men and widely distributed. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, studied these events and concluded they were likely projections of the collective unconscious during a time of great religious and social upheaval. But the physical detail and consistency in the descriptions, cylinders, spheres, crosses, aerial battles remain striking. Two ancient astronaut theorists. These are not psychological projections. They are literal descriptions of conflicts or maneuvers between different groups of extraterrestrial craft being observed by a pre-industrial society that lacked the vocabulary to describe what it was seeing. Questioning the canvas. Addressing the skepticism. No inquiry of this magnitude can proceed without rigorously addressing the counterarguments. The mainstream scientific and archaeological communities remain deeply skeptical of the ancient astronaut hypothesis, and for valid reasons. The primary argument against the theory is that it fundamentally underestimates the ingenuity and capability of our ancestors. Attributing great works like the pyramids or Pumapunku to aliens is seen by many as a form of cultural arrogance, denying the incredible achievements of ancient peoples. Skeptics argued that the precision of ancient stonework can, in fact, be explained by an abundance of time, manpower, and simple but effective tools used with immense skill and patience. Experiments have shown that copper tools, combined with abrasive sand, can indeed cut granite, albeit very slowly. The transportation of massive stones, while a daunting feat, is not deemed impossible with the use of levers, rollers, sledges, and vast coordinated teams of human labor. They argue that our modern reliance on machinery makes us forget what can be achieved with sheer human will and generational knowledge. Furthermore, psychological principles like pareidolia, our brain's tendency to find meaningful patterns in random data can explain why we see aliens in ancient art or maps in the layout of ancient cities, and phenomena like cargo cults, where pre-industrial societies who encounter advanced technology interpret it in religious or supernatural terms, provide a powerful framework for understanding how myths of gods arriving in fiery chariots could have originated from contact with other more advanced human cultures rather than extraterrestrials. These arguments are powerful and grounded in established principles. They provide a conventional framework that explains many of the mysteries without resorting to alien intervention. And yet, they do not fully account for the extremes. They do not silence the disquieting perfection of the H-blocks at Pumapunku. They do not fully explain the precise astronomical and geodesic knowledge encoded in global site placements. They do not account for the sheer specificity of the technological descriptions in Vedic texts. Each piece of evidence can be explained away individually, but the totality of the anomalies, The sheer weight of strangeness across continents and millennia demands consideration. The skeptical view provides the canvas, but it does not fully explain all the colors in the painting. Conclusion. A history rewritten in starlight, we have traveled from the high peaks of the Andes to the flooded chambers of a beat, from the ancient tablets of Sumer to the quantum code of our own DNA. Throughout this journey, a persistent and profound question echoes. Is the story of human history, as we know it, complete? The evidence presented does not constitute definitive proof of extraterrestrial intervention. It is circumstantial, fragmentary, and open to interpretation. Yet, when viewed collectively, it forms a compelling mosaic of anomaly and impossibility that challenges the foundations of our accepted past. We have seen engineering in stone so precise it rivals modern machines. We have read ancient texts that do not speak in allegory but in technical detail of flying craft and weapons of mass destruction. We have uncovered astronomical knowledge in primitive cultures that appears to have been gifted from a celestial source. We have confronted the possibility that our own biology contains a message from the stars, and that our planet's geological record may hold the fingerprints of technologies lost to deep time. While any single mystery might be dismissed as an error in dating, a fluke of nature, or a misinterpretation of myth, the pattern is global. The same architectural signatures, the same mythic themes, and the same impossible knowledge appear in civilizations that were supposedly unconnected by time, geography, and culture. The conventional explanations, while often plausible for individual cases, begin to fray when stretched to cover the sheer breadth and consistency of this phenomenon. The ancient astronaut hypothesis compels us to adopt a new perspective to see myths not as pure fantasy, but as history distorted through the filter of time and language. It asks us to look at our ancestors not as primitive and ignorant, but as eyewitnesses to events so extraordinary they could only be described as divine. And it forces us to consider the most humbling possibility of all, that humanity is not a cosmic accident, but a cosmic project. The final verdict on this theory remains unwritten. The ongoing work of a new generation of scientists and the truth may yet be found, buried beneath a lost city, encoded in a silent stretch of our genome, or waiting for us in the data from a new space telescope. Until then, we are left to ponder the cosmic fingerprints scattered across our world. They are a permanent and haunting reminder that the greatest chapter of human history may be the one we are just beginning to rediscover, a chapter that tells us we are not alone and never have been. Our story, it seems, may be part of a much larger and much older cosmic epic. The impossible boxers of Saqqara, while the Giza Plateau draws millions. A far more baffling mystery lies a few miles to the south, buried beneath the sands of Saqqara. Here, a subterranean network of tunnels carved from the bedrock houses the Officially, this was the burial place for the sacred Apis bulls, worshipped as manifestations of the god Pata. And indeed, some sarcophagi containing bull remains have been found, but it is the main gallery that defies all conventional explanation. Here, in massive alcoves carved into the tunnel walls, sit 24 enormous black boxers. These are not sarcophagi in any ordinary sense. They are colossal coffers, each weighing between 70 and 100 tons, including their lids. They are hewn from single blocks of the hardest stones known to the ancient Egyptians, rose granite from us hundreds of miles away, and even diorite, a stone of exceptional hardness and density. The boxers are gargantuan, and the precision with which they are crafted is beyond stunning. The surfaces, both inside and out, are polished to a mirror-like finish, optically flat to within fractions of a millimeter. The corners, both internal and external, are perfect, razor-sharp right angles. The massive lids, weighing over 30 tons each, are cut from the same stone block and fit so perfectly onto the boxers that not even a human hair could be inserted between the two surfaces. This presents a series of intractable problems for the conventional historical narrative. First, the question of manufacturing. How did a Bronze Age culture, using copper chisels and stone pounders, work a material as hard as granite and diorite to such a level of perfection? The tool marks associated with their known methods are completely absent. The precision suggests advanced machining, as if they were cut with giant, technologically sophisticated saws and polished with tools we have only developed in the last century. Second is the issue of transportation and placement. How were 100-ton monoliths lowered into these subterranean tunnels and then navigated through narrow, right-angled corridors into their final resting places? The clearances are so tight that modern engineers, equipped with heavy-duty cranes, have stated that they would struggle to replicate the feat. There is no evidence of ramps, pulleys, or any other lifting mechanisms sufficient for the task. Finally, there is the jarring contrast of the hieroglyphs found scrolled on some of the boxers. Unlike the masterfully inscribed hieroglyphs found in the great temples, the inscriptions on some of the Serapeum boxers are crude, unevenly carved, and poorly executed, as if they were graffiti added by a later, less sophisticated culture. This has led many researchers, including engineer and master craftsman Christopher Dunn, to conclude that the boxers were not created by the dynastic Egyptians who inscribed them. Like the Assyrian, the Serapeum was found, not built. These later cultures discovered this impossible underground chamber, could not fathom its original purpose, and repurposed it for their own religious needs, labeling the magnificent, pre-existing coffers as their own. The boxers themselves remain a silent, dark testament to a forgotten age of technology, legacy hardware from a godlike predecessor civilization. A library of out-of-place artifacts. The evidence for this lost high technology is not limited to monolithic structures. All over the world, smaller, yet equally perplexing objects have been unearthed. Artifacts so technologically anachronistic, they are commonly referred to as counterparts or out-of-place artifacts. In 1936, workers excavating a site near Baghdad, Iraq, discovered a small clay pot, approximately 13 centimeters high. Inside, it contained a copper cylinder, and suspended in the center of the cylinder was an iron rod, held in place by an asphalt stopper. Scientists quickly recognized the arrangement. It was a galvanic cell, a primitive wet cell battery. Replicas of the device, when filled with an acidic electrolyte like vinegar or grape juice, have been shown to produce a small but usable electric current. The object, dubbed the Baghdad battery, dates to the Parthian period. Around 250 BC, what would an ancient civilization need a battery for? Mainstream archaeologists have suggested it may have been used for electroplating, applying thin layers of gold or silver to other objects, or perhaps for religious rituals to produce a mild, tingling sensation to AU followers. But could it be something more? Could this simple battery be the last surviving component of a more complex electrical device? Its function, now long forgotten? More striking still are the so-called Quimbyar artifacts from Colombia. These small, golden pendants, created by the Quimbaya civilization around 1008, are officially catalogued as stylized zoomorphic figures, representing birds or insects. However, upon closer inspection, they bear a startling resemblance to modern aircraft. They feature distinct elements that seem aerodynamic in function. A clear fuselage, delta wings, and most importantly, vertical and horizontal stabilizers on a tail fin. These are features for flight stability that evolved in human aircraft, not in the animal kingdom. Intrigued, aerospace engineers in the 1990s constructed larger, remote-controlled scale models of the most famous of these artifacts. The results were astounding. The design was not only airworthy, but it possessed highly stable aerodynamic properties. It flew perfectly. Are we to believe that an ancient culture, through sheer coincidence, designed a religious trinket that just happens to embody the principles of modern aviation? Or were the Quimbaya people creating replicas, in their most precious metal, of the flying machines they witnessed in their skies, the canvas of the gods? Anomalies in ancient art. Long before written language, our ancestors chronicled their world on stone. In caves and on cliffs, they painted scenes of hunts, of animals, of their own communities. But among these familiar images, we find depictions of beings and objects that are profoundly strange. In the Kimberley region of Australia, Aboriginal cave paintings dating back thousands of years depict the Wangina, the supreme spirit beings of their creation mythology. These figures are not rendered like typical human forms. They are often large, pale white figures with enormous, black, lidless eyes, and are consistently shown without a mouth. Surrounding their heads are lines of radiation or energy, like a halo or the helmet of a spacesuit. Aboriginal elders, who have passed these stories down for countless generations, insist these are not metaphors. They are literal representations of the sky beings who came down in the dreamtime to create the world and give law to its people. Thousands of miles away, in Jomon, period Japan Sea, 10,000 to 300 BC, a Neolithic culture of hunter-gatherers created enigmatic clay figurines known as dogu. These are humanoid in shape but possess bizarre features that have baffled historians. Their most prominent feature is their massive, goggle-like eyes, which look for all the world like a form of protective eyewear. They are often depicted in what appears to be bulky, patterned clothing, which some researchers have interpreted as a type of pressurized suit. Why would a primitive, Stone Age culture consistently create statues of figures wearing what appears to be complex technical gear? Perhaps the most famous and controversial artistic anomaly is found deep within a crypt of the Temple of Hathor in Egypt. Here, a large wall relief depicts figures standing around a massive, elongated bulb-like object. Inside the bulb, a serpentine line snakes from one end to the other. The bulb's narrow end is connected via a cable to a rectangular box, which is often identified with the Jed pillar, a symbol of stability. To Egyptologists, this is a mythological scene representing the birth of a snake from a lotus flower. But to engineers and alternative researchers, the imagery is unmistakably technological. They argue it is a perfect schematic of a large-scale electrical lighting device, like a Crookes tube or a cathode ray tube. The bulb is the glass envelope, the snake is the filament or electron beam, and the cable connects it to a power source. The crypt itself is underground, suit-free, and would have been plunged in absolute darkness, making a powerful light source a necessity. Did the ancient Egyptians illuminate their sacred underground chambers, not with flickering torches, but with a forgotten form of advanced electrical technology passed down from a much earlier age? The global mythos, a common inheritance. If advanced beings once interacted with a nascent humanity, it is logical to assume their story would become the foundation of our oldest myths. It would be a history remembered as religion, and when we examine the mythologies of disparate and supposedly unconnected cultures, we find an astonishing set of shared narratives, a common inheritance that speaks of a single, global event. The story of a great flood is perhaps the most universal myth on Earth. From the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia and the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible to the legends of Manu in India, Deucalion in Greece, and the beliefs of countless indigenous cultures across the Americas, Africa, and Australia, the story repeats. A catastrophic deluge destroys the world, and a handful of survivors, often warned by a benevolent god, live on to repopulate the earth, carrying with them the seeds of civilization. Mainstream history attributes this to a shared human experience of local floods, but the detail and consistency suggest a single, planet-wide cataclysm. Could this be the memory of the end of the last ice age, around 11,600 years ago, when melting ice caps caused a dramatic rise in global sea levels? If ancient astronauts were present on Earth at this time, they would have witnessed it, perhaps even intervened to save a chosen group of humans. An event that would be forever recorded as divine intervention. Equally pervasive is the myth of the civilizer god. After the Great Cataclysm, a non-human or superhuman being arrives to bring knowledge to the survivors. In Suma, it was Oannus, a being who emerged from the sea in the form of a fishman to teach humanity writing, law, science, and agriculture. In the Andes of South America, the god Virakaka, a bearded, light-skinned teacher, traveled the lands after the flood, re-establishing civilization and teaching the arts and sciences before disappearing across the ocean, promising to one day return. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl performed the exact same role. The pattern is immutable. Catastrophe is followed by a non-human teacher who gives humanity the tools of civilization. Are these simply independent manifestations of a common psychological archetype? Or are they but persistent, global memory of the same extraterrestrial group working to rebuild human society after a planetary disaster, the Fermi paradox, and the forgotten message. In the face of these accumulated anomalies, we are drawn toward a final, profound question. If they were here, where are they now? This echoes the famous query posed by physicist Enrico Fermi in 1950, now known as the Fermi paradox. The universe is ancient and vast, filled with countless stars and potentially habitable planets. By all statistical probability, intelligent life should be common. Yet, we see no evidence of it. The sky is silent. The ancient astronaut hypothesis offers a radical solution to this paradox. The evidence is not absent. We have simply been looking in the wrong place and the wrong time. We are searching for radio signals from distant stars, when the proof of extraterrestrial intelligence may be written in stone beneath our feet and coded in the cells of our own body. Perhaps they came and went, leaving us as an ongoing experiment. Or perhaps they never left at all, content to observe us from a distance, respecting a principle of none. Another, more poignant possibility relates to a concept known as the Great Filter. This theory posits that there is some evolutionary or technological barrier so difficult to overcome that it prevents almost all civilizations from becoming interstellar. This filter could be the leap from prokaryotic to eukaryotic life, the development of tool use and intelligence, or, most ominously, the destructive potential of a civilization's own technology, like nuclear weapons or runaway artificial intelligence. In this context, the entire legacy of ancient astronauts can be reread as a message, a warning, and a guide. Perhaps our visitors were survivors of their own filter, and they seeded or guided life here to ensure that intelligence, their greatest cosmic inheritance, would not perish with them. The monuments they left behind may not be just tombs or temples, but complex machines or data storage devices, designed to activate or be understood only when we reached a certain level of technological or spiritual maturity. The Great Pyramids might be planetary stabilizers, the global grid of sacred sites, an energy or communication network. The myths that speak of celestial wars and divine judgment are not fantasies, but cautionary tales. They are a message, encoded in the most enduring forms available, designed to help their inheritors, humanity, navigate the perils of the great filter that lies before us. The story of ancient astronauts is not merely about who built the pyramids. It is about why they were built and what they are trying to tell us about our own future.